Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and a very warm welcome to the special online 2020 ISTP Conference. We're here in Amersfoort at the Prodent factory, and this is where they used to make the toothpaste that I was using as a child, so maybe that's why I feel so at home instantly already. The coming 2 hours we will inform you about the results and the current affairs, but most of all I hope for 2 hours we will be a little bit connected with the guests here and with you at home as well. The subtitle of this conference, 30 Years to Go, indicates the urgency. We have 30 years to make a new world together, a world in balance, a world that is circular, and I think that's the biggest challenge that mankind has ever faced. It's always good to realize if you want to change on your own, that's practically impossible, but if we want to change together, we can do it, and it is fun. We will start with an introduction on the event. Afterwards, there will be 4 sub-sessions, and to formulate goals we need to realize a circular process industry. After each session, there's ample room for questions, but we pick 2 of them, so use the chat function in your program to get the questions onto my table. I will introduce these 3 guests at my table in a few minutes. First of all, this year we are online. I think you noticed that by now. That has some advantages too. We are using the Network Platform app, and that has special extras. Sounds just as good as I'm saying it. Go check it out. For example, go to the program and look for Netwerkplein or Netwerk Carousel. And there are all kinds of options to meet people, to connect, and of course it's a bit different than doing it in real life, but maybe it's even easier. You just go there, you click, you connect, and you live happily ever after. Well, back to the table. My guests, let's give them a short introduction. Some say he's a visionary, although I say he's just stubborn. At least he's passionate in collaborating to make this world a better place. That's why I like him very much. The director of ISPT, Tjeerd Jongsma. Tjeerd, welcome.
Thank you.
My second guest is a professor of sustainable process technology at the Department of Chemical Engineering at the University of Twente. Quite a lot. He specializes in pyrolysis, oils, water, biomass and wood. And as chair academic advisory board of ISPT, he strongly believes that the academic institutions and the industry should work closer together. Very welcome, Sascha Kersen.
Thank you.
Did I say it right? There's so much to tell about you.
It's perfect.
Quite a lot for one guy, but all right. My third guest is chair of the Assurance Commission Industry, in Dutch that is the Borgingscommissie, for the climate agreement, and thus part of the Ed Nijpels team. I think it's quite nice to work with Ed Nijpels, I think.
It's great.
Yeah, I saw him in English just a few months ago. It was quite hilarious. He's a humoristic talent. She knows a lot about how to make the industry carbon neutral and circular. Welcome the European Director Big Urban Clients at Arcadis, Caroline Gerels. May I start a little bit personal with you? How did you guys hang up in the second lockdown light? Was it okay, Caroline?
It was okay, but it was a little bit disappointing. But since yesterday, I'm very optimistic again. Because I think there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, but is it a quick light? You're so easy to fix. There's a vaccine and you think, oh, okay, there's light.
Well, it's not a quick light, but it's an important light.
Yeah,
I think we conquered the fight.
Let's hope so.
Let's cross
December,
our fingers.
January, February, and then we're there. Nice. Tjeerd, how are you holding up?
Yes, in my studeerkamer houd ik altijd my study, which is actually my son's sleeping room.
Oh, you kicked him out?
Yeah, I kicked him out,
oh,
so he's living on his own now, and so that's okay. But it's very, very hard to keep the enthusiasm running during these times. Mm-hmm. You miss the people's connection.
So this is very nice to sit here, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, it's better, yes, and I finally can wear my suit again. And that's,
you especially bought a suit in January and you never wore it.
Yeah, I never wore it, so it's finally I have it.
Sascha, how are you doing?
Yeah,
everything at home as well?
Fine. At university, we are doing fine, hanging in there. At the moment in Twente, we have 40% on campus. That's also much appreciated by students, of course.
More than average, I think.
We have a big campus. Also lots of work online, of course, which is difficult. And well, it's going okay, but what you do see is that, I'd say, online education can never replace real education. That's also a big lesson that we learned.
Mm-hmm. We learn all kinds of lessons, don't we? We are going to talk about a circular process industry. Within 30 years, we have to fix that. It's rather a short period of time. What steps do we need to take to accomplish that? This is what I want to talk about with you. Sascha, may I start with you? What is the role of universities in this transition?
Oh, well, I think,
if there is any.
Oh, for sure. See, I think universities will have the most easy to define job to do, right? Well, the first and the most important thing, we have to educate at a very high level engineers in the future. That's our job. We did that for many years, of course. We will keep on doing that for many years. We might have to attract more youngsters to join us because it's not enough. We need more students doing engineering, that's for sure. We have to keep the level of education high, and I think that universities should start to collaborate not more, but better with industry.
And why is that?
Yeah, you now maybe see that maybe we are working in parallel. That we have universities.
Everybody in its own circular bubble, inventing all kinds of stuff and not communicating and sharing.
And we have these goals, right, that we want to achieve in 2050, which are huge. And I think universities can do better in actually focusing on these goals and making big steps over there.
And how do you do that in Twente?
Yeah, we have institutes and we have seminars and we try to align with these goals. And of course, a professor is always free to have his own hobbies, right, and to do some kind of interesting research on the side. But what you also need, if we have to meet these goals of 2050, then we have to take some concerted actions.
But then you get sort of a strange pressure on the whole matter. And I, not really quoting, but Ben Feringa, the famous Nobel Prize winner, said, all research should be curiosity-driven. And then you come up with solutions that you never dreamt of before. So now you have this stress, we need to go to 2050, so let's speed it up, and there's no curiosity anymore.
Yeah, see, it's of course it's not easy to debate, to disagree with Ben Feringa. He's a Nobel Prize winner, but I will do so anyway. Yeah, see, I think that Ben is right. There should be this free research for sure. But we should also realize that free research, so ideas that pop up now in the lab of Ben, of any other famous scientists, these ideas will not be, let's say, available in 2050.
No.
Because it just takes too long. We know for a fact that it takes at least 30 years for a process, from a factory, if you like, from availability to taking 1% of the total mix. So,
and is that changing as well? Because when you look at Steve Jobs, he had an idea and he said to his working people, well, how long would it take to realize that? And he said, well, 30 years. And then he said, you got 6 weeks. And they did it. So I'm exaggerating now.
No,
but
that's a very good point. I indeed think that not only universities, but maybe the whole industry could take a look at what is done by Steve Jobs, by ASML, for instance. For some reason, which I don't know, I'm not the expert here, other fields can innovate much faster than let's say, the chemical sector.
With a vaccine, it would take 3 years, and now it's in 6 months we have a vaccine. So maybe you should rethink the whole process of working together and speed things up as well.
We should speed things up. We should for sure speed things up.
Tjeerd, you believe in collaboration and innovation. How do you see the path towards 2050? Because it seems far away, but it's only 30 years.
It's only 30 years, and it's very, very easy to really design how it should look like in 2050, and we really know where we are right now. But the transition from here to there is very, very, very difficult. And as you said, we need to speed up, and it takes a lot of time to implement really technologies in the chemical industry, or in the food industry, or in the paper industry whatsoever. So we have to find a way to make that transition with the industry towards 2050.
And what will be the key solution to do that?
I think that's also what Sascha already mentioned, is that we need to collaborate and really integrate scientific know-how and application research together to really implement already while we're still finding out how it really works. So that might...
The fact that you don't know exactly what the next step will be shouldn't slow you down in actually start to move.
Yes, and we should do the things we are we can do without too much risk already right now. And we had a discussion earlier on about the implementation of hydrogen infrastructure. We know the hydrogen is coming, so why not implement the hydrogen structure right now? Because we know we need it anyway. So invest on that one.
Just start doing it.
Start doing it,
right.
and then on that flow, I think the investments also will come for companies to invest in hydrogen-driven processes, and that's where it should happen.
Mm-hmm. But there are tremendous slowing down factors like the fossil fuel industry. It's still a very powerful industry.
Yes.
How do you change people like that? Anybody who wants to comment, please join. But because when you learn from former transitions, like the Industrial Revolution or similar things, there was always
sweating the assets. That's what most companies do. Mm-hmm. That's not only the fossil industry. That's what all industries do. But indeed, the majority of our companies where we work together with, and it's also big companies, they all have a strategy towards 2050, and it's away from their fossil-driven base. And there's another thing which is interesting when we look at, for example, hydrogen. We make hydrogen from methane at this moment, mm-hmm. And it is still too expensive to do it on electricity.
Yeah.
But when you look at the electricity prices in, for example, Saudi Arabia, it's so low that it's even becoming more interesting to use renewable resources to produce hydrogen than to use methane. So in the end...
So it's a matter of getting all the knowledge all over the world, working together, sharing, yep. transparent, everything like that.
And make it a global play, because it's when the electricity prices in the Netherlands are they are stuck at 4 or 5 cents per kilowatt hour. That's too much to produce on large scale hydrogen, so we will import hydrogen. But why not work together with them and do our things with the hydrogen here?
Yeah.
So we need a global integration on that, and we need to look at the bigger picture. When we only look on the small things and only then it won't work.
Because we're such a silly small country, is it possible that when we really stick together here in a bit of European context, that we can be the front runners, Caroline?
Oh yes, for sure, because we are very innovative. We have a unique situation with 4 ports, from Eemshaven, Amsterdam, Rotterdam to Vlissingen. Mm-hmm. We have the knowledge, and we are able and willing to cooperate in a triangle.
Still, it's such a slow process still.
It is, and
we're so modest about it.
Yes.
It's very good that you're here.
You're right.
You just slam on the table.
And say, come on, guys. Mm-hmm. Germany is going fast as well. France is going fast. They are very powerful.
Ever imagine that France is doing stuff fast?
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
They're always slow. They have lunches for 2.5 hours. So we should be ahead of France,
very well.
shouldn't we?
We should be ahead of France, but maybe we need to cooperate with them as well, and then we can be the sustainable energy hub of Northwestern Europe.
That would be great.
That is great, because we already have a lot of infrastructure that we are needing.
What will be the role of the government in all that? Is there one? Because we are where we are right now in the change. There has to be some role for the government. Could you enlighten me on the matter?
Well, we have the targets. We agreed on that altogether. The government is, well, leading the orchestra at least, appointing a leader of the orchestra, and I think we need to cooperate, and the government needs to create, well, the conditions.
Right. To at least, if we know we have to end up in 2050 with a fully neutral circular economy, at least the government should point out a possible pathway. So yes. How to get there.
But we did it together.
Sasha is sort of sighing over there.
And speed up things. It has to be faster, like we just discussed, right? I think what we do not wrong, but not so good in the Netherlands, is that it takes such a long time to start something, right? If there is a new idea somewhere, then we have procedures which take at least 2 years, sometimes 4 years, and then we start. And then I look at my colleagues in Germany, France, and already busy doing it.
Yeah. And so how come? Because we can look what Germany and France are doing and say, oh, this is a good solution. Let's do that too.
It's procedures. It's many procedures. It's administration. It is, I think, debates in politics, what to do. shall we go for biomass or not?
Yeah, there's a lot of politics in the Netherlands, and nobody is really picking it up. I had a discussion with the scientific committee of GroenLinks, and then they talking about the transition.
What is that GroenLinks in English?
Green left.
Green left.
The Green Left Party.
The Green Left Party, GroenLinks.
Yeah.
But anyway, they asked me what we had a discussion about recycling of plastics and so on and so on, and then they said yes, but we do not want the customer to pay for it, because that is something we really need to circumvent. And then I said, what do you think it costs to make a completely sustainable packaging for a kilo of cheese? Now, make a guess.
3 cents.
No, it's a little bit less.
Even less?
Even less.
You see?
So
practically nothing.
There's practically nothing. And when the government is willing to really take up this cost in the chain by the VAT system or whatever, then we could almost instantly pay for the transition we need.
But for all three of you, how is it possible? Yeah, Karin.
I think it's also about democracy, to be honest. And we have a big opportunity because we have elections on the 17th of March next year. And I think at this table we have to think about the no regrets. You mentioned hydrogen. We pointed out a map of the Netherlands. We have infrastructure. We can reuse them as hydrogen infrastructure. Right. And I think we have to make the decisions.
But this is already in the details, isn't it? Shouldn't we just speak out louder as the industry, as the citizens of this country? We want a new future. We're out of time. The end play has started. We have sort of 10 years to get round the corner. So what are we waiting for? You have to give them a sort of green license to kill, in a way. What does it take till we get at that point that we say, this is taking too long?
Well, I think the next elections are really very important because we agreed on the targets and now we have to speed up the process, and then every other 4 years you have a moment to reset your own priorities, and when the voters are voting for climate change and every political party embraces it, you can have an agenda and then you can speed up the process.
Yeah.
So I think the next month...
You could do it the other way around as well. Just by looking each other in the eye, which is rather difficult in COVID times, but still, we can look at everybody at home and say, this is what we need. We want it, Sasha.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure. But
all universities together, all the companies you work with, just make one big voice, no time to waste.
Yeah, I think this is being done. I think universities are making this voice. We have all these institutes. We are sometimes even shouting.
That's good.
Also in ISPT we have these meetings, and once at such a meeting everybody agrees. And then the strange thing happens.
Yeah.
And
we go home and we forget. Yeah. And then we
should not allow them to go home.
Yeah, you should lock them up. So it's third lockdown. And you just keep them inside the university.
Until we solve the problem.
Yeah, that's good.
No, but what we said in our advice, that's called TICI, it's a task force for infrastructure for the climate change in the industry. We said we have 6 clusters. There's a map of it as well. We have 6 clusters in the Netherlands, and within each cluster you can start. So when you're the industry, for example, sealants, you see sealant. You can cooperate with your infrastructural companies, the industry and the government in your own cluster. And when you see the map of the Netherlands, this is almost 230. Here we have the blue hydrogen backbone, we have more electricity, we have warmth, we have steam, we have CO2 capture systems, etc.
Right.
And then you know where the infrastructure is and infrastructure structures. And then the industry knows what they can do and what specific projects in, for example, hydrogen, they can do to have return on investment as well.
But it still depends on companies whether they see a good business model. We'll talk about that later. And
it's just a plan. My point is, it's again just a plan.
You see?
Not just, it's a plan, it's a roadmap. But I would like to see that somebody stands up and says, and that's the guy or girl that can decide and says, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
And we're going to start right now.
So let me introduce a little bit more for the final question. I was on the island of Spitsbergen in 1999, and I was there for the WWF fund, which I'm an ambassador to, and I put my finger in the ice 21 years ago. It was way too soft, and the polar bears were going down, and I sort of freaked out, and this is since I put my head into sustainability. And I'm impatient right now. What do you want to say to the people at home, Caroline, and to everybody else listening in the Netherlands? What steps should we take towards 2030, 2050?
Well, shout out loud, be aware of the next elections, and try to change the world in your own region, in your own city, in your own cluster, because with 3 people you can change the world. For example, when you are the industry, you are the infrastructure company, and I'm the alderman or the vice mayor of a city.
You like that, huh? Industry
Decisions.
and infrastructure.
Yes, of course.
Yes, you're in power now.
With 3 people you can change the world, and it starts step by step, so why...
And we know the urgency, don't we?
Of course.
Sasha, what would you like to say to everyone?
Yeah, almost the same. Do what you can do yourself, right, at your own house. Simple things you can implement over there. And indeed start demanding this. Just say to companies, to governments, we want this, and then, well, they probably listen. Yeah.
There's no more time for negotiations and subtleties. Geert?
Yeah, I very much agree with Caroline. We have to involve also the politics. We are also always talking to the government, to the Ministry of Economic Affairs, and we should stop doing that. I think we should stop talking to those who are governing the Ministry of Economic Affairs. So we should have much more political action in this field, and I think we have a very good story to tell.
Yeah.
So I think...
I was in the Tweede Kamer, the second room.
The parliament.
The parliament. Very good. And we were talking about the rapport Brede Welvaart in May, and I said, is it still appropriate during COVID times? And there were all kinds of politicians, left-wing and right-wing, sitting there, and I sort of exploded. Said, this is not, the future for all of us is not left-wing or right-wing, it's a task for the parliament. So take up your responsibility and start changing. Yep. So maybe we should talk more to the parliament in general. So
for sure.
Stop losing time. Shall we see whether there are any questions popped up? Let's go to Nathan. Nathan, are you there?
How are you?
Where are you?
We're in a very sustainable house. Unfortunately, it doesn't sustain you from the cold. It has no roof or walls, but we're also here in Amersfoort at the Prodenfabriek.
Are you very cold now?
Well, actually, no, with all the lights and also, like Chair, this is the first time I've worn a suit in about
But you see, this is the basic of the problem. You're complaining about stuff that isn't even there. So, are there any questions?
We have a couple of questions. Now, the first question is from, actually, it's an international question, so there you go. It's from Washington, D.C. There's a Donald T., and he asks, there are a lot of people outside my house chanting, throw him out, throw him out. But in a sustainable society, we shouldn't waste anything. So can you help him with this problem? What's your advice for other governments in stimulating a sustainable industry?
Yeah, to rephrase it, how should we recycle Donald Trump, Carl? So, what can we do with the bastards?
Well, that's the best question I've ever had. I have to think about a solution.
Sasha?
With Trump? Throw him out.
Yeah? Feed him to the birds. It might be good too, yeah.
Biden already announced that that he wants to invest 1,700 billion euro of dollars in sustainability. So that's the right way to go.
Yeah, but the funny thing is, Trump promised all the miners to get the jobs back, and he didn't even deliver any of it.
No, and Biden probably also, but it's a good sign.
Well, but for me it's very important to address that 70 million people in the United States of America voted for Trump, 75 million for Biden. I'm an absolute Biden fan, but I was a fan of his speech as well. We have no red states, we have no blue states, we have only the United States. And I think we have to be aware of the fact that not everybody is convinced about climate change. So let's talk about that. Also in the United States of America, they have a big job to do.
Stop fracking, start changing.
Yes,
right.
I think that's important.
Maybe room for one more, slightly more serious question, Nathan.
I have a question from Maurits Boeje. He says, can we solve the problem by focusing on existing industry, or should we focus more on innovative new companies?
Can the old, mainly bigger companies change, or should we let them be taken over by small, scaling up innovations?
I think it's impossible to do it without the big money and the big investments of the big companies. But the big companies themselves are very, very slow in changing, so we need the smaller companies guide the bigger companies in these chains, and I think that's a very, very effective model to do it.
To bite them in the legs and...
Yeah, to bite them in the legs, but also to speed up innovations and show that it really can be done. And that what you see as an example, the vegetarische slager, which has been brought up by Unilever.
Yeah.
It's a small company, but Unilever has also sustainable meat nowadays.
Yeah, true.
And that's a way to go.
I actually put them together at the table for the first time.
Yes?
Yeah.
Oh.
We were talking about completely different stuff, and they didn't really react because they were just looking at each other. Interesting, interesting. So,
No,
Now-
but I
and now we
totally
have
agree. They are part of the solution.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think giants can dance as well. For example, in Sweden, you have steel made of hydrogen
Yeah.
and things like that. So we can inspire each other. Big companies can inspire each other. But we have to push them and to
Yeah.
challenge them.
you have to see the vision where we want to go to,
Yes.
and then work all together.
And that's a shared vision, yes.
Yeah, that's what we need. Oh, let's take 3 seconds for a shared vision, shall we? Really silly to do that. But
It's here on your...
I want to... This is my shared vision. Very good.
that's-
Thank you very much for this part. And good luck with everything you're doing. The next 15 minutes, we are going to talk about the circularity of materials. And to introduce that, let's watch a short video.
We are living in an environment where we're going to have soon a population growing in the direction of 9-10 billion. And so in that context, having a society built where waste is still waste is not sustainable. We have to upgrade what everything is waste into a circular economy. And so my question to ISPT is, how do we accelerate, how do we make it bigger, faster and more impactful, so that we create for the next generation, people after us, a legacy that this industry is vibrant, is successful and committed to a circular economy. Thank you so much and take care.
Yeah, 2 new experts on the matter at my table, and one is in the Zoom, I think. The Program Director, Circular Plastics Initiative at ISPT. Ronald, are you there in the Zoom?
Yes, I am.
Ah, can we see you as well, or just hear you? Oh, there you are. Hello. So, 2 years ago, I met the discoverer of the plastic soup, Ronald, Captain Charles Moore from the United States, and he told me about the nanoplastics that is going to be all over the world. I couldn't sleep for a whole weekend. How optimistic are you that we're going to solve the plastic mess we're in? Just a question from me to you.
I think eventually we will be solving this mess, but at this moment we are still in the midst of it. I think in Western Europe we can try and maybe try to educate, especially in relation to collection systems towards the rest of the world, because I think there the issue starts with the pollution of the seas and the oceans. So I think that's the way we, from our perspective, can help there. But eventually, I think the collection, where it starts with getting the waste from the streets and contained in more centralized processing areas. I think that's the way ahead.
Yeah, thanks. My second guest is Program Director Industrial Fluids Processing at ISTP, Kees Roest. Welcome, Kees. The focus and urgency on fluids, is that already high enough, do you think?
Yeah, I think industries are processing, so they are processing fluids, liquids, gases. So it's their core business very often, so they have attention to it. but to become circular, we really need to take actions, and we really need to drive these innovations to make more sustainable processes.
Yeah, but when you hear about the nanoplastics and Halbe Zijlstra throwing granulite in public waters, I think it's sort of a miracle that we have this brilliant drinking water from our taps every day. So is there already, with the normal citizen, an awareness that fluids are important?
Maybe not. As normal citizens, we are living our lives, doing our things, and you're not always thinking about the processes behind. I'm not sure if that's really necessary for everybody to think about that, because it's also very convenient to live a way like that.
Yeah.
But some people need to pay attention, and for the microplastics, of course, it's also a topic that's already taking a lot of science and technology, a lot of innovations, but it's quite difficult to change situations, as we discussed before in the previous session. So we really need to speed up these things and try to bring these innovations to the market, to the application.
So I'm extra glad you're here right now.
Okay, nice.
A fluid expert. My third guest knows a lot about circularity. He's on a personal mission, may I put it that way, to help the economy to be future-proof. A program leader, circular economy at the NGO Natuur en Milieu. He works together with companies and occasionally with governments and science. He's also involved in the Circular Plastic Initiative, so that's very good too. Quite a lot for one guy. Welcome, Jelmer Vierstra. Jelmer, why is it important for ISTP to work with, for example, an NGO like Natuur en Milieu?
Well, I think what is important when you want to make progress in becoming more sustainable, we need really solid and smart policies. And usually politicians react on societal debate, and societal debate, especially around plastics, is not always as precise in what we need currently. So we need to help them. And when business and NGOs have a sort of a common idea of where we should go, then usually politicians listen. Yeah.
And does it work so far? Because there's all kinds of fake news you can say now, and you can make your own truth, and this is rather difficult for NGOs, I guess.
Sure. I want to refer to the conversation that you had before, because well, I think if we want a sustainable future, polluter pays. That's the important principle. And I think our Central Bureau of Statistics this morning presented a study where the main conclusion is polluter doesn't pay in the Netherlands.
At all?
At all.
No.
So if we want bio-based resources for plastics to become competitive, we have to put a price on fossil fuels. If we want, if we want recycled content to be competitive, we have to put a price on fossil resources for the chemical industry as well. I think in the previous conversations you also talked about speed, and I think they blamed politicians for the lack of speed, and I think in the Netherlands, in France, what we don't have in France is the polder model.
Yeah.
In the Netherlands, when
we don't have any polders.
Exactly.
Right.
So when we discuss policies, we always ask to business, what do you think about these policies? And that takes ages because business never want polluters to pay.
Yeah, it's true. So it's better to have the China model. There's just one guy telling everybody what to do, but well,
French model is good enough.
Okay, let's go in between the French model. We are quickly running out of raw materials. I think that's not very new for you. I was talking to Professor Harald Sverdrup from Norway, and he painted a pretty grim picture. So we have to become circular quite rapidly. But still, a lot of products are designed for an end use. How can we change that for all three of you? So, Ronald, if you want to join in, how should we change the whole idea that material is valuable, and do we need raw material tax? Do we need cheaper labor to deconstruct stuff in a circular economy? What is the solution?
Maybe in the end we need almost everything, because we really need to hurry up with raw materials, because the raw materials indeed, some of them are really depleting very fast. And with the current rate we are living in the world, it's not possible to continue like that. So also for future generations we need to change this system and design for circularity. And that needs efforts from all kinds of organizations, all kinds of people. Actually all of us together. We need to work together.
But we've been saying that for quite a few years now, right? And the urgency is growing. So is a carbon dioxide pricing, is that the first step we really have to implement now right away? Or what would be good steps?
Carbon pricing is one thing, but it's like the taxation or giving pollution a price is much wider than just a CO2 tax. For instance, with packaging, but because that's what we are referring to now, we have extended producer's responsibility, which is European legislation, which makes companies such as Unilever and Albert Heijn responsible for dealing with the packaging post-consumer as well. Well, currently they're paying 220 million euros a year. It's expected to grow to 350 million euros a year. And what do you see happening? They participate in a plastic pact. They start to redesign their packaging because they have to pay if they don't become circular.
And is it really working? Because since the COVID crisis, we saw the recycled plastics pile up in industry plants because nobody wants to use it. It's far too complicated. The world change are fucked up. So it's really complicated.
So just EPR isn't doing it. What we also saw because of the COVID crisis, fossil fuel prices dropped. And this is what you want to substitute in a circular economy with recycled content or with bio-based content. So if we don't give a price to fossil raw materials, then it won't happen.
It won't happen.
And we don't have to use this money to give it all to Wopke. We can also use this money to subsidize bio and to subsidize recycled content. You know?
That's very good, because I was planning only to take money from Wopke.
You should also stimulate. If you stimulate the good behavior and punish the bad behavior, that in general works. Even stimulating the good behavior works even better than punishing the bad behavior.
Yeah,
so,
because then you feel sort of punished. And if you just award good stuff, that's always better.
Exactly.
Ronald, what do you think?
What I also would like to bring in is, we talked about design for recyclability, or design for recycling. And I think that is also something which is very important for two reasons. Because if you are doing that and you put it on your package, then also the consumer becomes much more aware of this important step to get circularity into the design of the products. And secondly, by doing so, you will really also address this towards the processes that are in development and will be further developed to get those products also recycled.
Yeah.
So I think that is also a very, very important step to work on, and I think the industry has a duty there, together with academia, to come up with good principles of design for recycling.
Yeah, and tell the story, obviously.
Yeah, that's very important. So that's why we also have these kind of days to bring the community together and to speak about these new innovations. So that's also very important. Now with the COVID crisis, sometimes a bit more challenging, but with this online, it works.
Here we are.
Easily.
So, but if you look at what's going on right now for all three of you, is it possible to find a good business model already for a circular process industry, or do we miss stuff? What do you think?
Well, I would like to refer to what Ronald said about putting a brand on a consumer packaging and showing them, hooray, this has recycled content, or hooray, this has bio-based material, and you should be willing to pay a bit more for it. I don't think that's the way we want to go. We don't want to have the circular economy or a world be dependent on a consumer that is willing to pay a bit more. We have to put a price on what is not right and use the money to subsidize what we do want. And obviously it's good to communicate with consumers because we need this awareness, but don't expect a transition in our economy to be driven by consumer desires.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I agree for a big part. So I said, you have
not
to
really
stimulate.
a big part, because you said you have to
Stimulate, yeah, but he also
says
said
you have to find them.
He said,
and
find
you
the bad
bought
ones.
something terrible. So I feel a slight difference.
Yeah, I also noticed in the beginning, but then he said also use the money that you use, that you obtain from finding the bad behavior and the bad producers, for example, and use that money to stimulate innovation and to stimulate the good behavior. So in the end, you have both of them and bring them together.
Well, it's a big dogma in the Netherlands. We have this Zalm norm where you should not confuse the money that is brought to the government with what you spend it on. But I think that's a thing that we have to break through in the Netherlands.
Right. Especially for things like this.
Exactly.
Because we need a breakthrough and we have to scale up and speed up.
And it can work everywhere. If we have it on pest control in agricultural production, we want to shift from pesticides to more biological pest control, fine chemical pest control, and give subsidies to biological pest control. It works everywhere.
I just with a fruit person in the Betuwe, and he's doing all kinds of experiments just on his own because he likes to make a better world. Stories like that are fantastic as well.
Yeah.
To show it's not always about money. It's about people trusting each other and seeing that what we are doing is not right, and we have to change and just start changing. And sometimes people will just throw money after you because they like you so much. What about that?
That's also bottom up. So sometimes you have initiatives that come from individuals, and they are very nice examples. And
but in the end, we have to help these individuals because this is a sort of an idealistic fruit grower, I guess.
Yeah.
But in the end, we have to make sure that it's economically profitable to do it the way he wants to do it.
I think you all know the book Drawdown, 100 circular cases all around the world. Do you know it? Or you should get the book, Drawdown. You know what drawdown is, I guess? When the whole world sucks more carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere than we actually put up there. And there's 100 cases, circular cases, all around the world. And when you go through the book, you're totally inspired stuff that is already there. So I think in the main stuff, people like Albert Heijn and Unilever, I've been there quite often to talk about plastics, tell the story, what you're struggling with, what you want to change, and people will help you in the end.
Yeah, storytelling is very important, so especially if it are inspirational stories. So books like that, I didn't know this particular book, but there are many examples, of course, of good behavior.
I'll give you a
practices.
copy.
Okay, nice.
This is the new Bible for circularity. So, Ronald,
Yes.
you still there?
I'm still there.
Oh, good. What do you think is the next step we should do to actually get the circularity going? Because we want to stop talking about it. We want to get in real action mode.
Well, I think what we're already trying to do, I think, is a step ahead, and that's trying to collaborate with the whole chain. So you have to involve the whole chain, and what we experienced when we started this is that there is a lot of different language at various steps in that chain. So first you have to be aware of that and connect the various players in that chain and try to get them to talk the same language. That was already quite a step, which took us about 1 year. In a setting with about 15 different players. And I think that is something is important to address and then work further. Try to get the confidence within such a group, but also do the storytelling about that and give good examples of what can work, but also what does not work.
Yeah. And in your analysis of the last year, of the last period, what are the things that really are slowing it down? What is difficult to accomplish?
It becomes, I think, difficult when you talk about the products of a company. Or if you target it towards a specific process, you have to try to work on the whole picture and try to put things as much as possible into that perspective. That's what I think is always important.
I see Jelmer nodding.
Well, it's an interesting question because if you want to make a product more circular, then obviously you can make a dashboard from recycled content in a car. But do we want a circular car or do we want resource-efficient mobility? We want to share cars. They don't work at all for 97% of the time. And so if we focus on products, then we miss a lot of the innovation possible and a lot of the enthusiasm of entrepreneurs that really want to do things differently.
It's sort of the old discussion of sustainability, making the old system sustainable or throwing away what's not good and come up with something new, which is always a bigger picture, and you have to make it more complex, but then the reward is far bigger. Yeah, which is
systemic change, and for that we need to work together again. So
yeah.
Collaboration is very important. It's not only the commercial companies, but also governmental institutions, knowledge institutes, and in the end, all of us citizens, we need to adapt to these new systemic changes.
And sometimes you need people like me just for the naming and shaming. It's always very nice. And then I like
my
that.
job, but
Yeah, oh, yeah, your job too. It's sort of alike. Yeah, that's why I like it very much. We go to Nathan. Nathan, are there any questions?
Yes, there are questions. Thank you for coming back to me. Let's start off with the first question is from Erin Kennedy, and she asks, expanding the recycling of conventional plastics, pushing for bioplastics, or pushing for alternative materials. So you have three choices, recycling, bioplastics, or alternative materials. What do you think is the best pathway forward in terms of impact, and does this align with consumer perception?
Well, who wants to comment on the matter?
I can say something from my mind. I'm not working so much with the plastics, maybe with the nanoplastic problem and the microplastics. But I think at the moment we have to do everything. So we cannot only work with alternative materials, because then we need other materials and it needs to be invented, and this whole chain needs to be
checked and rechecked, and it takes forever.
So we need to do both, or all three of them. So the plastics that we already have produced here on the table are also several examples. So these plastics are already there. So it would be a waste to throw them away or to burn them.
Yeah, to burn them.
Yeah. So I think we also need to make use of these kind of plastics. I don't know if that agrees with you.
Jelmer?
Well, to a certain extent, I was missing one solution, because sometimes it's not the material that you make it of, but for instance, in the Netherlands, we produce 3 billion coffee cups a year. Yeah. Specifically designed to use them once and then burn them again. So it doesn't matter what type of material you make them from, or if you make them from a certain material. Plastics is pretty much okay, but we need to reuse coffee cups. Yeah. Because that's where the real
or make them from a material, as soon as you burn it, that it will explode or something, so that you can't burn it.
Instead of fireworks.
Yeah.
Because that's forbidden.
But I know what you mean. So this is, again, a bigger perspective, and look at it differently.
But I think what the question comes from, obviously, is now we see that society sort of dislikes plastics, and then we switch to paper cups with a plastic foil, and is that helping? No, it's not helping. Worse. Yeah. So usually having plain, non-colored plastics is pretty much okay, because we can recycle it pretty good.
But then we should.
And we should.
Right. Ronald, any comments?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think we should focus on all the things. And recycling is certainly one of the things. And again, design for recycling there is very important, as was just mentioned, with the example of the foil on a cup. Yeah. So that's and bio-based eventually will also be important, because we will have to need carbon material, extra carbon material, to become and to stay circular. Yeah. So I think in that respect, also the carbon coming from bio-based is also very necessary, and can also play a very important role there. Yeah, and good facts are good too, because Captain Charles Moore from the Plastic Soup told me that the inside foil of a soup can, as soon as it hits the ocean water, it will dissolve into nanoplastics, and these are the sort of oestrogen imitation plastics. So the hypothesis now is that a part of the obesitas in the world comes men and women holding pre-pregnancy fat to the body because of these nanoplastics.
Okay.
Kees?
Nice story.
Yeah.
It's also storytelling.
Yeah, and then now I don't want any canned soup anymore. Simple as that.
Yeah.
So, Nathan.
Refuse is better always. So
you see?
If you don't use it, then it's better. And we eat much too much.
Just,
that's maybe also a cause of a big
change your food pattern, for crying out loud. Final question, Nathan.
In case Haringa, who asks, how can we influence customer perception when it does not align with reality? And gives an example, the perception that paper is always better than plastic, or the perception that biological is always better than chemical, or more accurately synthetic.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that later on as well, but it's a good question.
I think there's an important task for NGOs such as us. For instance, we had this trend in the Netherlands where companies would switch to biodegradable plastics because of this plastic pollution problem that we all, well, it is there. But biodegradable plastics don't solve that because they don't biodegrade under natural circumstances. So please, well, this is my job, to inform the people that we need real solutions.
Get the facts right, get the real solutions. Yeah, right.
And the facts are not always that simple. So that's a difficult task, I think, also for scientists, for knowledge institutes.
That's why we're here.
Yeah, I'm
really put. What is that, Ronald?
Yeah, in that respect, I think a lot of people also, and especially also in the scientific world, and also in the marketing world, they talk a lot about LCAs, life cycle analysis, life cycle assessment. And I think there also needs to be quite some developments to get the facts right. Yeah.
Good. Final words. I thank my three guests very much. The coming bit we're going to talk about 100% renewable energy, and again we start with a short video. Let's take a look.
Elektrificatie is de meest efficiënte manier om de industrie te verduurzamen. En de Nederlandse Noordzee biedt meer dan genoeg energie die we met offshore wind kunnen gaan opwekken. Alleen, zolang er geen langdurige vraag is, is er geen business case voor de opwek van elektriciteit. En als er niet genoeg opwek van elektriciteit is, is er geen business case voor elektrificatie. We zitten dus met een kip-ei-probleem. Mijn vraag is, hoe lossen we dit kip-ei-probleem op?
Yeah, good question. We'll come to that in a minute. We're going to talk about renewable energy, and today we concentrate on heat. The use of heat dominates the Dutch industrial energy system. More than 80% of the energy consumption in the industry is used for heat. But at the same time, the industry also discharges large amounts of residual heat into the environment. So in 2050, it all has to be a closed circle. And the question is, how are we going to do that? I'm sure my two guests here and one on the screen will have very solid answers to the problem. The first one is on the screen. She's Program Director Deep Eutectic Solvents, fantastic word, and Heat at ISPT, Anita Westbroek. Anita, hello. There you are. Yes, your sound is a bit low, so maybe you can speak up a bit more. The second one is here live in the flesh, Head of Unit Climate and Energy at VNCI. That's the branch organization of the Dutch chemical industry. Martijn Broekhoff, welcome. And Tjeerd is back too.
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm back here because Kees Biesel should be here, but Kees had got corona. So
he really got it?
He really got it,
oh.
He's in bed, and it's not. He told a very nasty story half an
hour
ago.
Well, maybe he's watching. Stay sort of healthy and recover fast.
So, but he briefed me completely, so I know what to say.
Good. Martijn, the question in the video, can you remember it?
Yes, which was about renewable power, I think.
Yeah.
But we're also going to talk about renewable heat as well. But,
sure, but first of all, as long as there's no business case, there...
It's difficult, of course, and the chicken-egg problem is very well known. So as long as we don't have a sustainable source of renewable power, it will be very difficult to immediately switch to using renewable power or using more electrification. This is a well-known issue. It's not new. But think about these complex chemical installations. They're huge. They're significant. So imagine making that switch. It's $1 million investment, which you make for 20, 30 years.
But the longer we stare at it and say, oh, it's really a huge problem, the sooner we begin.
Exactly.
So
there's no simple solution to that issue. I think that's the first thing to notice. We don't know exactly how to solve it. I mean, the first thing is to acknowledge there's a problem, we don't know how to solve it, and let's sit together to start thinking about how to do that. We can solve from our perspective, just from industry. You can't solve it just from the renewable or from the power sector. The government can't just dictate it. So somehow we just have to sit together and start thinking about how to do that and start acting on it.
Yeah. What would be your first step in that? So we've seen the problem now, it's huge. And what would be a good thing to do the coming 2 years?
I think the coming 2 years, start being serious about the commitment. So the commitment from industry is, yes, we will make the minus 49 to 50%. That's under the climate agreement. We've committed to that already. We're very serious about it. But there's multiple options to get there. One is through power, but the other one is maybe through applying more CCS, carbon capture and storage. Well, either way, you have to kind of go one way or the other. From a government perspective, you have to make sure that you are going to invest in the infrastructure, for instance. Caroline Gerels was here before. She's done a great job with the task force on infrastructure for the industry. That shows there's a lot of urgency. It takes a lot of time to invest in that infrastructure. Let's be very clear, as a government, we're going to commit ourselves as well that we will make sure that for instance, that big cable is going to be available.
It's a good line.
If you think
we want the big cable to be available.
Of course,
Good line, cheers.
And we will supply the technology to make a very effective use of it, because electrification, of course, is at this moment it's more expensive than using gas for heat or whatever. But the nice thing about electrification also is that you make use of heat pumps. So the efficiency of electricity is about 2 or 3 times higher than normal gas. And when we would have a system where gas would be a little bit more expensive and the electricity would be less expensive, then it already becomes a good business case.
It's a different model then.
Yeah, it's a different model, and that's also a matter of cooperation between the government, who is paying.
But what would it take? Because we're talking about it for 5 minutes now, and you say it's a huge problem, it's complicated, but there's ways to start. Then you say, hey, if you look at it differently, there's a new business model, and we have to use pumps more, and so it's relatively simple not to execute it, but to get the hang of it. It's not that complicated. So
no, this is not from a technical perspective. This is not the most complicated issue. No,
and still we're not speeding up.
Well, we are.
As far as we're talking about low temperature heat.
Exactly. I think that's one of the things. So if you think about this issue, you're working on electric crackers, the cracker of the future. That's something that's not available right now. We don't have that technology. Maybe 10 years from now, we'll start doing that. High temperature.
The same with CCP, CCU, everybody's talking about it, but...
Well, let's first get the first CCS cluster industrial up and running. We're moving ahead on that, and that's a world premiere. So that's good.
That's good.
But for electric cracking, we don't have a solution yet at all.
Which is good, and we have to start.
For residue heat, it's a little bit simpler.
Right.
But there, the complexity is much more in who do you work with. It's up to the fence. I think companies can do quite a bit, but then beyond the fence, you need to have the infrastructure, and you have to cooperation of the built environment. The local governments need to kind of get things started, and then you get into the people's houses.
You see?
Well, then it becomes very complicated. So,
let's go to Anita. She's been listening from a distance. Anita, what do you think so far?
Can you hear me?
Yes, right now it's much better.
Oh, that's good. Well, thanks to my charming cameraman, I guess. So.
You have a charming cameraman. Can we see him?
Yeah, well, maybe.
The upper half was okay. So go on.
You looked a little familiar to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think in addition to what Martijn was saying, I think it is also looking at the heat pumps. They are maybe there, but there is still quite a big challenge also to get them integrated, because it's not like a fridge that you have a plug and you put it in the socket. It is something that on which you have to adjust your process.
But why is that so difficult? Because I was in the harbor of Rotterdam, I think in 2016, and there were 264 companies responsible for 21% of the carbon dioxide emission in the Netherlands, and they said then and there, we're going to make this harbor circular in 2050. And the first thing that really didn't work out was the heat exchange system. Yeah. 2 years later they said, oh, it's practically impossible to do. So, Anita, why is it so difficult?
Why is it difficult? Well, I think the difficulty, of such a heat network is that you are also dependent on each other. So it's quite often not the technology, but it's the whole organization. And who owns the energy? Who owns the heat? Who is the one that is responsible for taking care that everyone has sufficient and it is being cascaded? So there are a lot of things that need to be developed at the same time. So not only infrastructure, not only the technology, but also our whole organization and also all the whole legal framework.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, Martijn. Who's taking care of the whole legal thing? Who owns the new system? How are you going to divide it?
There's many ways to cut it and to work it out. I mean, there's nobody who is really owning the whole thing.
But are people actually digging into it and coming up with solutions?
Of course. I mean, the heat exchange, the steam project in Rotterdam is a big one. And they've been talking about it for years. The plans are there. We've also tried to kind of calculate it with the national carbon price and how it works out. Well, such a national carbon price and uncertainty in that process doesn't really help you to make that investment or to build a business case. Right. So you also need to have some extent of certainty from policymakers, like this is something we want to have, and as such, we're going to make it work.
And we're going to support it for 10 years. And
exactly. So, and that's not a simple solution. Just a carbon price as such won't drive this thing. You need something else as well. You need to have a mix of policies that are very developed, very refined, which help you in the specific case.
Reduce risks.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think the big difference between this transition and the energy transition is that it's mostly brownfield situations. You have existing installations which will need to be replaced with renewable installations. And that's very different from just taking a piece of offshore sea and build some offshore wind project there.
Make something new.
You build something new. It's greenfield. It's relatively easy.
Far more
and if you make that step towards what policy you have in place, if you think about the subsidy scheme that's in place for renewable power, wind on land has about 19 different categories of subsidies, because every situation is different.
Is that very Dutch, or do the French do that too?
Well, it works, because we want to have all these things up and running, and it's different if you are behind a dike or on top of a dike.
And it's quite easy to calculate, because you know how much the wind, how strong the winds are, etc., etc.
Yeah, exactly.
So then it's easy, but in our
But still, 19 different types of subsidies.
No, it's so same subsidy, but different categories. And I think we need that kind of differentiation in the industry as well. And this is the first year that it's being opened right now, the subsidy for industrial decarbonization. But there's one category for residual heat.
You really believe in it, don't you?
Of course I do believe
it. I like that, because I see your eyes light up like, yes, we need to get going. Good. So let me put a question to all three of you. How optimistic in the end are you guys?
Well, I mean, we have to get there, so I'm relatively optimistic. Yeah?
Relatively?
Yeah, I mean, if you compare the conversation we have in the Netherlands right now, to the conversation in Europe, we're way ahead. We're talking about how to facilitate the transition. Well, in Europe, it's much more about the instruments and much more just about how
do we really want this? And
it's more defensive in a way, more reactive.
We're looking more into the integral system, and I think that's very, very important. And that the dialogue between government and industry is really going on, because we are going to need high temperature processes. because we need to activate, you need to activate molecules. So there always will be high temperature processes which are impossible to do with normal heat pumps or whatever. So we have a residual high temperature heat. So we will going to generate that high temperature heat with either hydrogen or electricity, and cascade from there on. And that's how it should be done. But then you need a solution where also the urban environment is involved, and also the intermediate users of heat are involved. And that's how we should cascade it.
So again, it's the bigger picture. And
it's the bigger picture. And that's why poldering, as you mentioned earlier, is very, very important to really get everybody at the table, because that's a way to really reduce the overall common exhaust.
And would it be possible that the way getting there takes a lot of time and negotiating and developing and innovating, and then all of a sudden you just flip it over and then it will start? Because you have to get things in order before you can really change? Or is that a bit too Jip and Janneke?
Well, I do think that we need to speed up and accelerate in every way possible. In a way we do policy making, in a way we start thinking about our business cases and our investments, but also in the way we do innovation, actually. I mean, the way we do innovation at the moment is very sequential in a way. You try to develop something, it doesn't work, you take something else, try to develop that.
Training on the job.
That doesn't really work if you think about the scale of the challenge. So you need to start thinking much more in parallel innovation. Try everything that's on the table, move it forward. If things doesn't work, pick the other things which are way behind and move them ahead as well.
Good.
And at the same time develop the market.
Yeah, but it will eventually come after it, I think. As soon as you start changing, the market will follow.
Not necessarily. I mean, at the moment, a lot of the innovations actually get stuck at tier level 5. So where you start kind of running into the valley of death. And that's really what you need to solve as well.
Yeah.
And make sure there's a significant market pool.
To push it over.
Otherwise...
And when that's indeed for our heat platform, what we erected with Anita which Anita is heading, we try to get more companies with the same problem together to really create that market and make a sizable heat pump, for example, which can be rolled out in different sectors, in the food sector, the paper sector, etc., and thereby reducing the cost price and
share the problems and share the solutions,
share the risk, and drop the investment cost.
Let's go to Anita for a bit. Are you optimistic, Anita?
Yes, I'm very optimistic.
Very.
I'm convinced that we will make it. I'm definitely convinced, but I think it's also because the urgency will grow. So as soon as the urgency is really high, we will just do it. At that moment, we will have everything in place, and everyone will cooperate to get this integral solution. So as I think also Tjeerd well explained, we need to work together to get all the elements, and we will do it. And I'm convinced that technologically it's possible, but we need to cooperate to get all the elements together.
Good. I think your cameraman will love you even more now. So, let's go to Nathan. Are there any questions?
There are some questions, although first the chat seemed to be slightly distracted with the toy tractor on the table, and they thought this session would be about farmer protests. But
no, the circular agriculture will come on later. So.
Yeah, I said that.
Oh, good.
But the questions for this session would be, first is a statement from Wil Duivenvoorde. Maybe you could react to his statement. He says, heat distribution is about, indeed, infrastructure, but also about redundancy issues of all users and suppliers connected to a grid. So I was wondering what your reaction would be.
Martijn.
Well, yes, if you think about the way the Netherlands are organized, we have like 4 or 5 specific integrated chemical clusters, and they're all using each other's heat and processes and feeding off of that. It's for the process streams, but also for the heat streams. So making an investment into an efficient use of heat somewhere will release some more steam somewhere else. Trying to work that out is extremely complex. Again.
Yeah.
So
But the good thing is, in a small business park like the Netherlands, when we can figure it out, we can spread it all over the world.
Of course.
Yeah.
No, definitely.
So you just have to work a little bit harder, Martijn.
I will do my best.
I agree with the phrase of yours, because we should be the guide country for really implementing these things.
I think so too, because we're very well organized. And
we're well organized, we listen to each other.
Yeah. most of the time. Anita, what do you think on the statement?
Well, I think we in the Netherlands, but I think everywhere in the world, we have proven that we can do the same with electricity and water supply, where also the demand and supply may vary. So it's a matter of storage and a good distribution network, but it can be done. And also with the whole digitalization we have, then I think also the smart artificial intelligence kind of systems can help us out.
Mm-hmm. Good. Nathan, final small question before the break.
A small question, a direct question. From Jorni Koenarts, we received the question, can there be a short explanation about what an electrocracker is and what the benefits are?
Oh, good.
Cheer, you want to do it? Well, chemical cracking is basically the way we make plastics. With a very high heat process, we transfer mostly fossil fuels into plastics. And that requires a very high temperature. We have 5 of these in the Netherlands. They each emit about, 0.8 megatons of carbon emissions a year. And they run 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Well, transferring those into electrocrackers, that's the challenge.
Yeah, and it's very interesting to do it, because an electrocracker gives the opportunity to really circumvent the emissions of carbon dioxide and the complex carbon dioxide emissions, because you use the one fourth of the total to heat it up.
Yeah.
And when you can do that with electricity, you in principle make a climate neutral cracker. And this cracker, which we use now for the fossil fuels, we can use it later on also to use waste chemicals of waste plastics or whatever. So with one strike we make the crackers completely sustainable for the coming 30 years.
Yeah, that would be nice.
They will help in the transition, even though these crackers are still running on
fossil fuels.
Fossil fuels.
Yeah.
They can be rebuilt and that's why this electrochemical cracking is very interesting.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I think somebody at home is really glad. Guests, thank you very much for this part. It's time for a short break, ladies and gentlemen. Let's say 10 minutes. Yeah. Let's make it 10 minutes. Stretch your legs, get a fresh coffee, do some recycling on the way, and we see each other in a few moments.
Digital transformation is changing how we work. Across industries and geographies, we see that the combination of sensors and AI generally produces better business outcomes. We see the enormous potential of power of these tools. But with great power comes great responsibility. So part of that responsibility is to consider the negative, unintended consequences of powerful AI. Think of loss of autonomy or potential negative biases in algorithms. My questions. Should the national government try to regulate the industry? Or is regulation only effective on an international level? Do we need regulation at all?
Welcome back with 3 new questions at the table right away. I hope you are a bit re-energized for the second bit. We're going to focus on industrial processes that are embedded in societal ecosystems. Good, huh, Caroline?
It's very good.
Yeah, and the question is, what do you think of the questions?
Great questions. We have some answers. I think we need to regulate everything, at least on European and preferably on global level, of course, because the market is global.
Let me introduce the two other guests at the table. The Program Director System Integration at ISPT, Andreas de Gaten.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
You sit here like you've been sitting here for the last 1.5 hours.
Well, that's what you started off saying, that I should have been here all the time, looking that system integration is everything.
It's key to everything.
Yeah, I guess it is.
Yes, I'm glad you finally showed up. And my third guest is the Program Director Industry 4.0, Social Acceptance and PTTT at ISPT. It's a lot of abbreviations. Frans van den Akker, welcome too. How is it to work with young talent in these matters?
Yeah, great.
Yeah?
Obviously, we need new answers, we need new inspiration and innovation. Youngsters are there to inspire us, especially in digitization, because we didn't learn it at school.
No, and they look differently, I guess.
Yes.
What is the difference between, say, a man or a woman from around 25 and our generation?
Well, maybe, I'm not quite sure, but maybe when you're older you see risks, problems, and you have things to spare. And if you're young, you're eager to start, as you say, well, let's not start talking, let's start doing.
And your defense system is lower, I guess. There's not so much to lose when you're 25. Exactly. Yeah, that's a good thing to keep in mind. There's an old English saying, and I want to put it in the middle of the table, and it says, you have to maintain your garden. To start off a bit philosophical, Caroline. Because when you take care of the garden where your feet touch the ground, this little bit of the planet, and where your roots are and your loved ones are living, then, and everybody would do that, we would have a better planet.
Yeah, that's true. Well, but it's more complex than that. We need system integration.
Yes.
No, but actually, there's a point in that. I think what you were saying brought to my mind a lecture that I saw on Springtide this year. With, was it Ad Verschuren, I think?
Right.
And I think you were even hosting the session there, where he mentioned that economy is about staatshuishoudkunde. It's to maintain the household, not just the financial part of it. It's about an integral look of making sure that everybody's healthy and taken care of, because only then you can reach for higher levels of developing yourself. And in a transition, well, we need everything. We just need the economy there, but we also need the society to work to support that development. And then we need young talent for that, but we need also all kinds of aspects coming together to move forward.
And how does the pandemic help us in this perspective? Because I said to my banker, when my work is finished because of COVID, I still have to pay my mortgage. And when the bank is out of a job because of COVID, you just print extra money. So the gap between real value and economic value is broadening rapidly. So this is, I think, in our advantage, Caroline.
Well, what I learned was that behavioral change is possible. When you really want to have a change in your behavior, you can do it. And I think that's the biggest lesson we learned. Because we need behavioral change and we need to revalue some things. For example, as you said, money is not the most important thing. Well-being is important, long-term targets for climate adaptation.
Frans?
Yeah, what I was thinking, if you want to change really, and you said behavioral change, I was thinking about if you really want, a verb says that if you want to build a ship, it's not that you give tools to the people, but you give them the longing to the sea. So if together we have that, well, we have less focus on all kinds of tools and things, but we go together as with the young people.
We want to go to the moon, we don't know how, but we're going there.
Exactly,
and,
we want to reach the moon, and that we succeeded quite fast.
Yeah.
So if we really want to succeed in this transition, the energy transition, the digital transition, if you just look at the longer perspective, that really, that will trigger us. And
so the 2050 picture of the world, we have to impose on everybody, like, this is where we want to go. Right.
With less carbon, etc.
Now back to the video, the societal status of the industry. It pollutes and there's carbon dioxide emission and there's a very negative image after 20 years of discussion. And on the other hand, this industry makes products. Oh, your microphone is slipping, so you get a handheld. It produces stuff that makes our lives better. So how should we combine the two and still go on the path to 2050?
Yeah, I think what we learned as well is that the industry is the kind of engine of our economy. Yeah? It's about jobs, jobs, jobs. It's important, and we have about 700,000 jobs in the industry here in the Netherlands. What we learned as well is that, for example, the food industry is very strong, so we still had things to eat and to drink, etc., etc. And that's also very important. We created our own mouth caps, etc.
Yeah.
So I think it's very important not only for the economy, but also for your own independency. But you're totally right. I think acceptance is a very important thing because we really need industry for our own well-being. And now it's too much about pollution, so we were waiting for very good examples, and then we can show that industry is a part of the solution and not a part of the problem.
Yeah. Andreas?
Yeah, I fully subscribe to that. I think that...
But it's two opposites. On the one hand, you have a very negative image, pollution and shit going on, and then, oh, it makes all kinds of stuff we really want to purchase and we want to have and make a better world. So how do we combine the two, integrate them to a new outlook on the industry?
Well, so I think on the one hand the industry has a tremendous challenge because they have a lot of work to do. It's the second biggest challenge in the climate agreement currently to get the carbon emissions down with 14 megatons per year for 2030. But how to do that is actually very complex. I mean, you can replace a power station for a windmill or a set of windmills, but a steel factory you cannot replace for another steel factory without reinventing the entire thing. And then the status of that steel factory in society, if you live, say, in Beverwijk in the area, it's twofold. There's a hospital there because there's the brandwondencentrum is there for a reason. Yeah. Because people got injuries.
Used to get burned because of making steel.
Exactly.
Right.
People live nearby who have their jobs, or let's say they supply the sandwiches for lunch or stuff like that. So there's a close connection, but also they get waste from spilling
black rains and all kinds of stuff falling out.
We heard a lot about Tata, they are so prominently there, but this issue other industries have as well.
Yeah.
So I think it starts to understand and appreciate on the one hand what is the meaning of what industry is delivering to society as a value, the fact that we sit here in chairs, have all kinds of stuff around us that we use every day, and appreciate that, and understand what it takes to make that, and how to make that in a sustainable way, and understand together that's a challenge that we have to take up together.
But how?
But how to do that?
Should we do that? Yes.
That's something I'm wondering about as well, actually.
Yeah, but you're expert on integrating stuff, so...
yeah, okay.
Give us a beginning of an answer.
Beginning of an answer. One very important thing is to have more than plenty of renewable power. Because, let's say, for example, you want to do steel making, coming back to that example again, if you want to replace the coal, you need to have an alternative.
Right.
And the only alternative you have that is sustainable is renewable power, make hydrogen and use the hydrogen to transfer the iron ore into iron and then on into products. But you can only use that hydrogen if you can make it if you have plenty of renewable power.
Yeah.
So everything starts with the transition of the power supply.
So you have to use the old factory first to build all the windmills to get the hydrogen, and then in the end you can flip it around. So
Actually,
it's
yes,
again, it's the bigger picture. So
that is what happens. Yeah.
Andreas?
And then learn how to do that. Frans.
Yeah.
Frans, sorry. Yeah.
I hope that you can hear me now.
Probably.
Well, what I'm thinking about, there's a well-known discussion. You have your farm material on table, that children do not any longer know where the milk comes from.
True.
A cow is the answer. Just in case, yes, just in case.
It's science at the table.
Yes,
you notice it instantly. Yeah.
But the same goes for all the materials that Andreas is looking for. So the factories are somewhere at the corner of the Netherlands, and one of the ideas is if the people do not come to a factory, because you can go there sometimes, let's bring the process of creation, the process industry, to the people, showing all kind of cases in pop-up experiences throughout the Netherlands, how it is that material is being made and that we are working on circularity and all those nice things. So let's show how products are being made and that we're all together indeed using those materials. That could be a first step. Start a dialogue, start a communication about the products. And
be transparent.
Be transparent.
Be honest.
Be honest.
For a change.
Exactly.
If you pollute stuff, don't hide it. Just say, oops, made a mistake. we'll fix it.
Exactly. Before there was a mention about the life chain analysis, for instance, which is a very complicated thing at the moment. You need experts, scientists. That's fine, but that's not for people like me. So I need simple tools that explain to me takes more energy to create than something else. So explain to me how products are being made, bring the factories and the industry to the people, and start dialogues together about what you want as a society. Could be a start, at least.
Maybe an interesting point, because before you asked about COVID and what did it do to us, well, one thing it did to us was a shortage of toilet paper.
Yeah.
Because in the beginning, suddenly there was panic in Australia.
I was so lucky. I have a neighbor who has a whole cellar filled with toilet paper. So I'm good till 2050.
So that's where all the toilet paper went, I guess.
I guess so.
And then actually there was this guy in a truck crying, laughing his head off. See, look how much toilet paper we actually have.
It's everywhere.
But that toilet paper, again, comes from a factory.
Yeah.
And the factories were making it still. So it's not like they stopped working, but still there was a shortage. But I mean, it's one of those products that comes from the industry that has a meaning. And if it's not there, it's rather inconvenient.
Yeah.
So again, it's important to have those supply chains there and appreciate where it comes from and see what it means in your life.
Yeah.
And what I'm wondering, because Caroline, you are involved in these discussions about how to make this transition happen in the industry. Is this relation with the everyday society discussed in those settings as well, and what the transition means to our lives, and how that support can be taken care of?
For sure. But we started with the infrastructure, because
of course.
You need infrastructure to change as well, and infrastructure structures. When you want to have steel on hydrogen, you need infrastructure for that. And I think we can go in depth with that debate. I think it's very necessary, very. I think we need 70–80% of the people in the Netherlands who are really convinced that it's necessary to do something.
It's at the third place now of everything we find important. Even during COVID, it was 14 or something, and now it's the third place.
Yeah.
So everybody finally realizes, end game, we have to change.
And Joe Biden mentioned it all the time as one of his 4 topics.
Because he forgot the other things.
No, I don't think so. I think it's top 4 priority, Adam.
But it is.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. But then again, as Andreas asked, so when do the normal people come in? We have to tell them, we have to involve them, we have to bring them to the factories.
I see in my neighborhood, or probably in other places, well, people want to change or do things themselves. And this is something they cannot really influence, or they don't know how to influence. Yeah. How can we find ways of making that possible?
Well, I think it's very important that the industry gets its best practices, because when the industry is changing, we are having a lot of impact. That helps a lot. For example, in 1973, during the oil crisis, Joop den Uyl was there, and he said, "Well,
it vividly.
Yeah, it was
I was roller
very impressive.
On the A1, it wasn't even there yet, so that was quite."
And it was very impressive, but he said 30% is because of the people, but he didn't say 70% is due to the industry. So I think when the industry is taking its responsibility, and they want to take it, and they will deliver their best practices, it starts to be a credible story.
But what does that mean for the companies? Do they have the right leaders at the moment? Is there enough training to get things going? Because you have to change, and they have been doing it for 20 years, 50 years, family business. They just don't know how to change. How do we do that?
Well, I think in the Netherlands we have very good captains of industry who are very aware of their responsibility to create a more sustainable industry. For example, in the ports, for example, in the oil industry, for example, in the chemical industry. And then again, they say we need infrastructure, so we need to cooperate. Right. I think the national government needs to take the first steps now and to create step by step the backbone for hydrogen. And then the industry gets the opportunity to show that they are very responsible.
Do we agree? Do we have the right captains of industry?
I think we have quite a lot that are really thinking very much forward. I agree. For example,
are they acting on it?
Yes,
or
they
are
are.
Just talking about it?
It's very interesting, because with the link between infrastructure and say producing renewable hydrogen, there is leadership. There are companies now taking investments. It's starting investments, but still like 100 megawatt electrolyzer being built in Zeeland in the next 5 years or so, but also in Groningen, Noord H2, where Gasunie is working very closely with Seaport and with Shell and building an industrial consortium to really start implementing that. So there's forward motion in that area to make that leadership, to make the transition happen.
Good.
So and this is what you see in every industrial cluster, actually.
Frans, do you agree?
Yeah, but I'd like, hopefully, this is a question and a remark at the same time, hopefully this infrastructure also includes a data infrastructure. So for the digitization, I think it's really a change agent that we are entering this digitization transition as well. And apart from the hardware that's everywhere, we will have this data infrastructure, and we have data all around, and we can use this new data in the coming years, and it will be a large change and will enable us to talk about integration, about value chains, about where to optimize, etc. So hopefully, not just the traditional infrastructure, but also the data infrastructure is discussed, and that is something we have to do together. Hopefully even at European level, because we need an industrial data space policy. We need data definitions to be defined and prevent that someone outside of the Netherlands will take over our businesses because they own the data.
Right. It's a good point, Caroline, because otherwise we are going to make a new world on basis of data from the old world.
Yes.
So this is not very good.
No, that's not good.
So
Andreas is a
what are you
specialist
going to do about that?
Well, first of all, we said...
See, I shove it just...
Yeah,
Thank you.
and I try to shove it a little bit to Andreas, but my answer is from Tiki, that we need to invest in that as well. When it comes to the clusters and cluster energy strategies, we need safe houses to share data, to do the right thing on the right moment, and to speed up the processes, and then you can use artificial intelligence as well. But I think, Andreas, you have more to add.
Yeah, no, we work in the same area a bit. So we set up decision support tools to understand basically what it means if I make an investment, what it means to me, but also what it means to you as a neighbor. Because if you look in the industry clusters, everything is connected. And now it's all optimized. So if you pull out one piece and you put something else back, the whole system will
at
not
least
completely
starts
fall
to
apart.
trouble and you don't know what happens.
Yeah,
right.
Things start to become
unstable,
more difficult, or maybe possible that are not there. But you need to understand what are your choices and what are the smart or best choices, or maybe the defined needs. If you start looking at these things together, and I think tools and data are very useful to get insights. And on top of that, you need to really find the practice to work together, to come to common insights. And there, I think, and maybe that's also a part of a transition. We are now all in a world where everything is about competition.
Right.
And
there's hardly any time for that left, is there?
It's a zero-sum game. I win, you lose. But the game will never stop. So if you win and the other one loses, then in the end, people will start opposing you, or the dynamic will go all kinds of ways. You see now the dynamic towards Amazon and Google and those also changes because it's not appreciated that they are the sole owner of all data of the world.
And they're just fucking up your perspective. It finally becomes clear that all the bubbles they're creating is just total drama for making a new world together. So we have to get rid of all these stupid algorithms.
And so if you bring it together in the Netherlands or in a part of the Netherlands, then it's all about what do we want to be, and how do we want to get to the point of what we want to be. How do we do that?
For all three of you, in one sentence, what would you say to the government, the politicians, to the big companies on this matter? What should they do?
Make a list of no regrets and make a decision about it next spring.
Can you make a list for them so that just...
Well, why not?
Yeah, please do. Otherwise they say, oh, well, I was too busy, couldn't make it.
But I think when we talk together here with about 20 people, we have about 10 decisions to be made by the national government, which are no regret. So let's start with that.
So I'll keep you up on that one. So afterwards, just make me the list.
Thank you.
I'll publish it for you. Andreas, what should we do?
Well, I have one question, because if you make the list for them, how is it going to be their list? I think it should be owned by them as well.
Or we just don't tell them she made it, and we just give it to them.
You can tell them, whisper them, you should say this, and then...
It's very smart, it's very smart what you say. But at the same time, when the specialists agree on no regret, I think the politicians will be...
smart enough to follow.
I think so. Thank you.
Beat. Yeah, good.
Room for experimentation is very important.
And money, obviously.
And money to support it. But room is not only physical, but in the general sense. Regulatory, financial, but try things and see what works. And what
very smart remark.
Improve.
Start trying things better.
Obviously, I would say in the end, people has to make the change and to innovate. So what we need is people, we need competences, we need courses, and we need young people to help us together. So the no regret is obviously to look at education and make the Netherlands a place to work and to learn.
I was, for 1 second, I thought, let's make the Netherlands great again, but I was so lucky you made a different sense. But I get what you mean. Yeah, second is good too. Yeah, let's go to Nathan. Maybe he's got a few questions for us.
Yes, hello, Harm. Indeed, first, before I ask a question, I want to say I really liked Caroline's statement about jobs, and Frans saying we need people, because at ISPT we have a job opening. So if you go to the website, ispt.eu, you can send an email to info@isp.eu, and if you get a job, I get a chocolate rabbit. So
is there an age limit, or?
No, of course not. I mean, of course it'd be 18 or so, but. Okay, back to the questions. Von Manon Eikelenboom, she asks, we hear you say that we should impose our long-term vision on the people, but should we not also involve these people in shaping a shared vision for the future? For instance, by empowering people to participate and involving them in ecosystems.
I feel in all the polder system coming on, but still, is it a good question?
Short, yes, absolutely. And the question is then how to do this? Well, we've come up now with this new concept, which is called the learning community. So indeed creating communities in which we learn together, not just the students or the professionals, but together, and make those places to experiment, absolutely involve each other and work together.
This is what I do at Catapult. Do you know it? It's
yes, we know.
PPS, public-private, working together. MBOs, HBOs sounds like a television company. HBOs working together, lifelong learnings, and it's a very good thing. So.
And I have a very simple no regret as well, because we need technical engineers. We have 3 very good technical universities, but they are all packed. For example, TU Delft has about 25,000 students now, but they have more applicants. So why don't we enlarge our capacity to let the new engineers grow?
In a slightly different way, what Andreas means to just expand everything we want to discover.
They're all top 10 technical universities in the world. They're great.
Put it on the list.
I put it on the list.
Good. You're very good at the moment. So, Nathan, final question for this round.
We have a question from Pin van Cape. Isn't the risk of focusing on the long-term visions that industry people will wait until they materialize and put off implementing measures that could already bring savings in the short term?
Okay, well, before we answer, the guy opposite to you, what is he thinking? He just sits there and is like...
No, he's not paid to talk.
I'm not paid to talk, no. He's actually, there are some other interesting questions as well, but why do you pick this one?
Okay, but too bad you're not in charge. What about it? If we focus on the long-term vision, does it take away all the things we can do right now?
No, absolutely. Absolutely not. As I was saying, that if you long for the sea, you will start building the ship, and there are very long stories from 1,000 years ago that people start doing things for the long future, for your children and your grandchildren, because that's what you motivate. So I believe that if you're really passionate about things, we will start doing it anyhow.
It's very biblical as well. In the 7th generation, your children's children. We build from that stuff, so we recognize that. Yeah. Good. Andreas?
1 second. The question again for a moment.
Well, if we concentrate on the faraway picture, do we lose stuff for right now?
I think so. Of course, we need a large goals, so be climate neutral and circular, all of that. And we need to take steps to get there, because we don't know what the steps will be in 10 years' time. But I just told Frans, I looked at an interesting movie many people know. Now I forgot it. The Terminator. Terminator. It was shot in 1983, 84, and it feels like yesterday, but it was more than 30 years ago. And then when there was a problem, they looked up the phone number in the phone book in a payphone. Well, there were no mobile phones, so society was completely different. But in your mind, it's not that different. No. So 30 years from now, keeping in mind what 30 years ago was, start looking at movies from 30 years ago. They're very popular anyway these days.
Yeah.
And think, so if that is what the situation was then, 30 years is not that far away. And how do we get there?
Well, we're in the biggest intelligence revolution ever. So it might be quite different. There's Internet of Touch coming. Did you hear about it?
Nope.
Well, it's coming, Internet of Touch.
Wow.
So so you can actually feel what anybody, it's very good for the porn industry as well.
Of course.
Aside from that. So, but I know your point. The whole world wouldn't change that much. So
the main thing is it's hard to imagine what it will look like. It will be very different, but it will go gradually, and we have to move now. That's very important.
It's a very good final remark for this round. Thank you, three, and for being here. Run off to your next appointment and make the list.
I make the list.
Promise?
In March it will be finished.
No doubt there's a virtual applause for the three of you. And let's switch to our focus to a nature-inclusive circular agriculture. Another very easy thing we have to solve. And of course we start with a video.
A transition covering several sectors like agro, food processing, chemical and energy. And my question is, how do you involve all sectors and create support from stakeholders for your proposed transition? And secondly, what will be the role for the processing industry in this respect?
You talk about the transition from quantity to quality. But the status quo is that the Netherlands is very proud on our position as second agri-food export country in the world. So according to me, we need a transition in our way of thinking. And we should much more focus on added value. How do you match that with the incoming and outgoing streams in your take on circular agriculture? Is my question.
Yes, and these three questions I'm going to put to my three new guests at the table. Tjeerd is back, so hello Tjeerd. And the other two, the program director MFFF Drying and Dewatering at ISPT, Peter de Jong. Welcome. And the overall director of ISPT, I just said it, that's you, and head of public affairs at AVB, founding father of this fascinating project, Peter Bruinenberg. Peter, welcome. Groningse roots.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, me too, so I feel at home instantly. Could you react to the two questions? So we're the second largest in and outputter on the agro stuff in the world.
Yeah, the question thinks that it's all about quantity, but it's usually about quality in Dutch agriculture. Starting from flowers, which are very beautiful, starting from ingredient companies like my own company, AVB, who makes ingredients and not protein stuff itself.
Yeah, but does it require, because everything that comes into the harbor of Rotterdam that we put out to France and Germany and everywhere, we count as a Dutch export product. So is there a new way of thinking involved that we need?
Yeah, well, for instance, we should consider that the Netherlands is a small country, and if we would be Germany, then we would the export of the Netherlands to Germany, France, and Belgium is roughly 60% of all our exports. So it's a small country with a fertile soil which can produce a lot.
Yeah.
And we do it for our neighboring countries.
Mm-hmm. But there's a huge change to be made. Peter II, shall we? What do you think? Can we just change it a little, or do we need really to restructure everything?
Yeah, well, I would say we could consider the agriculture industry industry as an industry, as a factory at least. And we can just give them some boundary conditions like the nitrogen output and that kind of things. And then, okay, see what's happening, because we are a very clever country with very good experts to do so. And the reason why we are so a big export country is that we make quality, we make added value in the end. And that's the reason why all the people want our products. So, yeah.
But we're exhausting the land, the nature is slowly dying on us, there's too much nitrogen, it's kind of a complex problem nowadays, Peter.
Yes, it is, but I believe that if we are very clever people, and also the farmers are very clever people, and if you give them a clear regulation, not changing every year, say, okay, you have to achieve this in, let's say, 5 years, they will manage it.
So they're at least willing to change as long as we guide them and help them and not let them pay for everything. And Peter the First, you came up with a Gronings model. Can you in essence tell me what the model is all about?
The model we are working on at the moment is that there are a lot of challenges for agriculture, for chemical industry, and the cooperatives take up this challenge, and we said together as cooperatives, people want a lot of us, we think we have a lot of opportunities, let us put together a program, but then a real program. If we want to make a food transition in the Netherlands, then we need a long period, and we want also a long period to do it, because I cannot give the results in 3 years. No. I think we need 10 years.
But what is the plan? What are you trying to change?
The plan is that we want, there are two things we're trying to change. First of all, the Netherlands has a policy, but Europe has a policy of protein transition, as it is called. So our diet with 60% of animal proteins and 40% of plant proteins should shift the other way around to 60-40 for plants, 40 for animals.
Or even more.
Or even more.
I would say 90-10.
And then, of course, the question is, how are you going to make these proteins? And people have a simple idea that protein plants, protein crops are the solution to the problem, but I think it's more complicated than that. And secondly, what people forget is that the present industry, who processes agricultural materials, already is producing a lot of proteins. So instead of thinking of something completely new, let's build on what we have already. And I heard a question about how should farmers change. Well, my farmers at AVB don't have any problem with that. They simply want to know, where is the market demand for these proteins? How can I make money?
Let's put that on the table. When you want to come to a fully circular agriculture, you need a new value chain. So you need everybody in the chain to chip in and to sit at the table and to come up with a new idea. This is how we're going to do it. What should such a system look like, Tjeerd?
Yes, it should be completely, nowadays, a nature inclusive, completely carbon closed, nitrogen closed system.
At all possible?
Yes, it is possible. But then we need to
we bring in stuff from Brazil and we fuck up all kinds of systems. How are we going to do that?
I don't know whether we fuck it up. That's your words.
Sort of.
but in the end, we have a very, very efficient agricultural system. When you look at tuinbouw, how you call it in English, the horticulture, they made these changes already tens of years ago. Perhaps you looked at David Attenborough's new movie, and in the end he ended up, well, this is the way to go. Making more and effective use of the land, and that's also what we like to do in Groningen, where we want to use crops which give the most benefit in a for nutritional value for human beings in the end. So that's where we're going to focus on. So we're going to change the way we use we plant the crops. We're going to change the focus not on quantity but on quality.
Right.
And we want to have more components inclusive in these crops. And when you do it good for the health of the human beings, then you also do it good for the soil, because when everything what is coming into the food is coming out of the soil.
Right.
So when you want to have a good nature inclusive system and a circular system, then you need to bring back in the soil what you get off the soil. So when you make a very good, highly nutritious products, then you automatically
improve the soil, etc., etc.
Yes.
Right.
So
that's
what the system is all about, and that's what we started. The fascinating project. The last 3 letters are in Groningen.
Right. You see, but when you look at a broader perspective, even here, then there's a lot of people say we have to technically innovate agriculture as well.
Yep.
So around big cities, we have to build large buildings where we can grow crops and we can make artificial meat and stuff like that, where the people live, and then we get extra land that we can give back to nature, stuff like that. You hear all the time, Peter One.
Yeah, you hear that all the time. I think it's and so you should do that, but imagine that the amount of hectares we have in Groningen available, then, and if you want to change something, that's a lot of land where we have to produce something, and if we change the system to more with crops with more proteins, then it's also beneficial for the people living in the cities, because, well, if you want to eat beans all the day, I have no objection to that, but I think it's not healthy.
No.
So the variety in your diet, that should be the focus, and it should be a healthy diet. And sometimes, I sometimes feel like a missionary. I have to explain things. People, for instance, forget that the potato is one of the most productive crops in terms of protein in the Netherlands.
I know. I live in between all the potatoes. So, yeah.
So do we really need a new crops, or can we do it with the crops we have today? And I think there's a lot of possibility for the crops today.
Yeah.
It's not only potatoes, it's also sugar beet, etc.
Yeah, even for biomass.
And there's another thing about to say about things doing very close to the cities, because most people are trying to do that because they want to keep the food in a fresh chain, and fresh is of course a lot of waste. When you have a fresh chain, almost 50% and sometimes even more.
That can improve, of course, but
yes, but when you make a conserved food, you
deep fry it instantly and then
deep frying or to put it in a jar or whatever.
Hack it
canned foods.
Right.
In principle, there's nothing wrong with them, and then you can use everything you get.
That's another perspective story we should tell, because when people don't know, I actually fell for that question last year as well. Which is more healthy, deep fried food or fresh food? In 90% it's deep fried food, but it doesn't feel right. So. Peter, too, you earlier said I can make the change, but then I need a lot of time. Otherwise I can't tell it to people, and we can't get it organized. Before we reach a fully circular agriculture, there are a lot of imperfections. How can we sort of equal them out on our way, and what do we tell everyone? We're busy doing it, but it's still not perfect. People will point at you, oh my God, it's still not good. How should we tackle that?
Well, then I come back to the end-to-end approach. Yeah? So we have the short chains around villages and cities and so on, so the people can see that something is happening. But on the other hand, there are some technology challenges that we have to meet and to complete. And that's also where ISPT is coming in. For example, in the total crop use, so we are talking about different crops, but also the total crop use. There are so many compounds in it that we can use, and also the quality of all these compounds is of importance, because proteins, you were talking about 90% plant protein, 10%, well, proteins from animals.
Or maybe even 98 and 2.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm not sure.
We'll
because
get somewhere.
We have also to check what's the quality of the protein and how to make it.
Yeah.
Because you can have a very nice plant protein, but if you need 10 processing steps to get it on the table, then that's not that sustainable.
It's taking up a lot of energy as well, and stuff.
Water and so on.
So you have to look at the system.
Again, the whole system, it's very complicated, isn't it? Peter One, now you're in Groningen, and you're totally right about everything, of course, but in Wageningen they're right as well, and then you have Enschede and Rotterdam, they're all right. So who's going to win this battle, and what are we going to do?
Yeah, it's not about winning. It's where
we learned that earlier from Andreas. It's not about winning. It's very good.
Where can you start? What's the best place to start?
And work together.
And if you look at Groningen, the agriculture is there, the industry is there.
You see, he's right after all. You see, yes.
And don't forget that Groningen is a big landing place for the sustainable energy in the Netherlands. So all these components are needed for the sustainable protein transition.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a lot of questions from provinces close by, like Friesland and Drenthe. Can't we participate? I get people from Wageningen. Can't we participate? Of course you can participate, but we are in the lead as a cooperators. We need facilitators. We know that we have to go to Wageningen. It's no doubt about it. But we will say what Wageningen has to do instead of the other way around.
Yeah. And maybe they will say something back to you, and then you'll.
But the nice thing is that we have, and that's what we addressed earlier on, is that we have a lot of political support in Groningen. Yeah, because the three of the gedeputeerden, Nienke Houwman, IJsbrand, and Staghouwer, all three of them are really supportive of this program. So they're really pushing it through in the province.
Good. And maybe it's got something to do as well with the Communist Party a few years ago.
That would be the ideal situation. But
they're working together in Groningen. This is what our roots are. So.
Look, if we succeed, and I'm very optimistic that we'll succeed, then we at the Groningen cooperatives and our plants, etc., we will expand.
Well, it's very good because you're so certain of your case. It's very, very nice.
Of course, I'm certain.
For all three of you, let's start with Tjeerd. When will there be sort of a recognizable circular agriculture in the Netherlands? When will we be up and really running?
In this project, we will be up and running this summer because we will do our first experiments, and that will be really seeable. So you can rent a bike.
You can visit it, and you can
see it. Visit and you can feel it. So that's the first step in the transition.
Just another little thing. I was actually talking to a landscape designer, and they said when you design the fields differently, you get other mowing patterns, so you can save like 25% of energy because you just mow in a different structure.
Yeah, but this different structure, this strokenlandbouw as you call it, strip articles, is very, very interesting because it also reduces the diseases in the crops. It's all very, very well balanced, more or less.
And go with the natural flow of the landscape as well.
Which is flat in Groningen.
And the landscape will change. And people, I'm trying to explain to people that please, the landscape will change. I think in a positive way, but.
But it's always good to see how the land was built in the first place, where the rivers were, where the little streams were, the hills, and then when you can incorporate it in your whole design, it seems to be even better, I was told.
I think so, yes.
Well, we have to
what people
exchange
want to see
phone
is
numbers.
there's a lot of flowers in the fields, and that's my warning. I'm warning you, perhaps it won't be more flowers, but it will be a different type of cropping systems. And strokenlandbouw, it's very difficult to get an English word for that, but
Struken agriculture.
Yeah, something like that. These big monocultures of sugar beets, potatoes, and wheat and other crops. I think this will change because we need also to do it in a sustainable way.
We'll squeeze the flowers in somewhere. We need bees.
There will be flowers.
Yeah, of course. Anyway. Peter too?
Yeah, well, I think this is a good start, and there are already projects starting. I recently finished a project for the Waddeneilanden, which is of course a very small country. Well, in itself.
Yeah, but it's very
you
good
can
to
start.
To
start a circular agriculture over there, and well, we make nice steps. We see some entrepreneurs who are willing to do it so, and they can add value to the products. Okay, it's not yet the final goal, but it's the first start, and I think the people also in the Netherlands are willing to change. I think the society is at a point that they want to change also.
Absolutely. And give us a dream date. When will the whole agriculture be circular, Peter?
The whole?
Yes, in the Netherlands, not in Europe, not in the world.
I have a plan for Groningen.
No, but think bigger.
I think that changing an agriculture system takes endurance.
We have endurance.
Yeah, but
we don't have the youth anymore.
I mean real endurance.
No, but is it 2030, 2040?
I think that in 2030 we will see we already will have seen the big changes in systems. So a further integration of the animal sector and the agricultural sector.
This is only 10 years.
Yeah, 10 years, and I will be 75, Hans.
Yeah, again, 65. Wow, I'm way older than you are, probably. So that's good. Let's go to Nathan. Are there any questions?
Yes, indeed. In fact, there's a little bit of a confusion, but not for me. I've been to Groningen. That the common wisdom in Groningen is that deep-fried food is healthier than fresh food. But maybe you meant deep-frozen food, but... You never know.
Oh, God. You started with the deep fried. Was it me? No, of course, deep frozen food.
Yeah.
Deep fried is very nice too, but not very healthy. So
you can never be sure with Groningen.
No.
But back to the questions. One question from Kees Haringen is, what role do you foresee for GMOs? And can we convince the EU that responsible GM use benefits circular agriculture? And how to convince the public?
Well, everything, basically, yes.
These are three very big questions. I think that for the start, we can do it with the building blocks we already have. And of course, I would like to see crops which are completely resistant against any disease. But normally we call them weeds, if they are completely resistant to all the diseases. So I think there is a role for GMO, but
you have some very tasty weeds as well.
Yeah,
so.
I know. But then we first have to discuss what we think is a GMO.
Exactly.
That's a completely different discussion, which I'm very happy and willing to do, but not today.
No, but it will integrate as well. You do it more natural, less poison, which I can never say on behalf of the farmers. It's not poison.
But this new cropping system will also help us to reduce the use of all kinds of pesticides.
Of all kinds of things. And we take the good stuff and we forget the bad stuff. Good. Another question, Nathan?
Yes, we have a question from Margarita Rolandi, and she asks, how can we build a sustainable food system that allows us to meet humanity's increasing demand for food without continuing to destroy the environment?
Right.
Well, that's simple. That's the transition from 60-40 animal to plant to let's start first with 60 plant, and that's a big change. And that will reduce the imports of all kinds of proteins crops in the Netherlands with an enormous amount.
And I think what Chit was pointing out, logistics in the world, because so much food is going to waste.
So half of it you can by waste reduction. And of course, when you increase the nutritional value of food, you need less food, and when we can improve the yields per hectare, which we can, then you have another step. So there are a lot of steps to be taken, and they will all dramatically reduce the footprint of food in the world. And I think we should do it.
And awareness, new value to food, because we throw out.
Awareness is one of the topics we also involved in this program. We especially we hired a few good people to really manage that, because it's not simple for us as technological people to really involve the society.
No, but that's my job. So maybe it's a good thing that everybody in its life has at least to work for 2 months with a farmer.
If they come in May, they can help us with the weeding, then we don't need the pesticides.
And then they finally know what a potato in the field looks like, which is really important, and how much effort it takes to get it on the plate. So, good enough answer? Probably. Then I say thank you very much to my 2 Peters for being here, and good luck in Groningen, and I'll come to visit you. I want to see it with my own eyes, and so
summer next year.
You're off the hook, and Tjeerd, please stay with me, because we're going to try to get your impressions on what we discussed and draw a few conclusions. So, so far, what did you hear? Are you more optimistic than 2 hours ago, or do you feel more pressure and more weight on you?
No, I feel less pressure and less weight because I see that there's a a lot of commonality in the answers we had at the table. Everybody more or less said this is something we need to do together, and the majority of the people also focused on the transition rather than the end goal, because the transition is the harshest part to tackle.
Yeah.
And I think that's something we realize already some time.
But everybody is saying too, it's so complex. Yeah. So everything clicks to something else.
The first step is to realize that you don't know how complex it is. So, and that step we've already made, and now we're going to deconvolute the complexity of the system.
And is it maybe a good thing to forget about how complex it is? Just start somewhere.
You have to start somewhere, because when the system is too complex, you cannot understand it beforehand anyway. So
you get paralyzed. You just stare at it.
And you don't know where you're going when you don't take the first step, because when you're not moving, your GPS won't indicate anything.
No. How would you summarize the most crucial next steps that you heard earlier on?
Summarize the most crucial next steps?
Especially for ISTP.
ISPT, yeah, it's a difficult abbreviation. The next step for us is indeed get everybody involved, and that's something which we already are doing. We are focusing mainly on the industry at this moment, but I see that we have a lot of profit on involving society in a more effective way. We already are involving NGOs also in our projects. I think it's very important to do that, because we need a complete transition, and we need to support that transition. And we can do that by the technology part, but we need we need the connection with the other
yeah, but
players
you
in the
have a clear vision. You know what to do, where to go. You see how complex it is, and then you want to speed things up, scale things up, and you're a networking organization.
Yes.
That will slow you down instantly.
No, not necessarily, because when we communicate the no regret steps in a more effective way, we will speed up the whole system. And we are not a system we're not a profit company,
which helps a lot.
Which helps a lot. So we're not going for the short wins. We're going for the complete transition.
So you feel that your grip is tightening, and you really know.
Yes, I think and our impact is also increasing, because we have more people who know how complex it is, and we are working also on models which enable us to really communicate the facts rather than the feelings of people.
Good. Shall we go to Nathan for the last time? Maybe there's a few questions just for you. Nathan, are there a few questions for Tjeerd?
Well, there's not one question for Tjeerd, but there is a general question about CO2 compensation and fossil energy. Maybe you could talk about that.
CO2 compensation and fossil energy, that means CCS. Well, I'm not very much in favor of CCS, because carbon capture and storage is, well, more or less an end-of-pipe solution.
Yeah, it's old-fashioned. You put a good thing in the ground again.
Yes. So I don't think we should, as a company, work on CCS.
But everybody I talk to, all the politicians, that's at least what we need for the coming 20 years. We need it. So
yes, because they signed a document somewhere
where it's already in there.
It's already in there. So they do not have the possibility to move. But when you look at it from a scientific point of view, that CCS is only a waste of money.
Yeah, and material. So it's ridiculous. Your final conclusion. Are you a happy man?
Yes, I'm a happy man, and I really like working together with you. Yes, and thank you very much for helping us out in this
You're so welcome. It's my pleasure to be here. Ladies and gentlemen, a circular future is waiting for us. We need it. That's my conclusion. We need it fast. And the good thing is that future is waiting out there for us to make it. So it's our call. Good luck. Thanks for watching. And Tjeerd, are you not forgetting something?
Probably.
I think so too. You're forgetting stuff. It's your 10th anniversary at ISPT.
No, that was a few years ago already. Oh, yeah, my 10th anniversary.
It's your 10th anniversary.
My 10th anniversary.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Look, there's the anniversary.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, we did. There's cake. Happy anniversary. And the good thing is, I have a jury report, and I'm going to read it. Tjeerd, you connect all the different sectors in the industry. You come up with ideas. You tie people together. That's very good too. You create consortia, and as a result, new programs arise. You are doing all of this incredibly well. And we hope we'll continue to do that for ISPT for a long time. And all those new initiatives that you got involved in, please keep them coming. So a big virtual applause on behalf of everybody, and here as well.
Thank you very much.
So your final comment on that?
Yeah, I didn't see that coming. No.
Are you staying?
Yes, I'm staying. Yes.
You see, that's all we need. We're going to eat the cake, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you see the future that's lying ahead of us that we're trying to make together, and we will. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.